Cancer. There is something that happens to a person when they are about to receive an unexpected sum of money, and almost no one talks about it. So I want to start there. The thing that happens is a kind of internal preparation that the person is not aware of doing. The preparation occurs at a level beneath conscious awareness. It involves the slow loosening of certain habits that have been operating in the background: habits of withholding, habits of contingency planning, habits of measuring twice and acting once. These habits have been adaptive in conditions of scarcity, and they have shaped your daily rhythms for longer than you may realize. The preparation that is now occurring is the gradual loosening of these habits in advance of the conditions that will no longer require them. You may not be conscious of the loosening, but it is happening. And I want to begin by acknowledging it, because the acknowledgement is part of how you become aware of what is already underway in you. The unexpected sum that the title mentions is real, and it is approaching. But the sum is only one feature of what is occurring. The other feature, less visible but equally important, is the interior shift that is making the sum receivable. Money does not flow into lives that cannot hold it. Money flows toward people who are structurally prepared to receive it without immediately leaking it back out. You are becoming one of those people. The becoming has been ongoing. It is reaching the point where the conditions can begin to express themselves in your visible life. The sum that is approaching is the first visible expression of the deeper preparation that has already occurred. I want to describe the texture of the sum itself, because the texture will help you recognize it when it arrives. The sum is meaningful enough to make a difference, but not so large that it overwhelms the structure of your life. It is in a range that allows you to address something specific, to make a decision that was previously pending, or to provide a moment of relief that you have been needing without yet having articulated the need. The size is appropriate. It is what the moment calls for. Larger amounts may follow in their own time. This one is calibrated to the current phase. The sum will arrive through a channel that you can trace. It will not be mysterious. It will come from somewhere identifiable. The source may be expected, in that you have been working toward it, or unexpected, in that it arrives from a direction you were not specifically pursuing. Either is possible. The unexpected source would not be unusual. The universe sometimes routes resources through channels that are not the channels you have been actively building. The routing follows its own logic, and the logic includes considerations that operate beyond your immediate awareness. I want to address what I am sensing about the actual mechanism of arrival, because the mechanism has its own particular shape. There is a person, or perhaps a small entity, that is involved in the routing, not necessarily someone you know well, possibly someone you know only peripherally, or someone you have not yet directly interacted with, but who is in a position to affect the flow of resources in your direction. This person or entity is the practical instrument through which the arrival will occur. You do not need to identify them in advance. They will be visible when the arrival happens. But knowing that there is a specific person or entity involved may help you receive the arrival more concretely than if you were imagining a vague, impersonal flow. I want to share something specific about the timing. The arrival is closer than your skepticism would estimate. It is not weeks away. It is closer than weeks. The exact day is not something I can give you with full precision, but the window is more immediate than gradual. You may want to live in the coming days with a slight extra openness to communications that arrive through ordinary channels: messages, notifications, documents, phone calls. Any of these could be the medium through which the news of the arrival reaches you. The medium will likely be ordinary, even though the content is significant. I want to address the part of the title that says beware, because I want to honor what it points toward without amplifying the cautionary tone. The beware in the title is, I think, gesturing at something real about how unexpected sums need to be handled, not in a warning of bad outcomes sense, in a practical receiving sense. There are some things to be mindful of when sums arrive unexpectedly, and the mindfulness produces better outcomes than reactive handling would produce. So I want to address what the mindfulness involves. treating it as helpful guidance rather than as ominous warning. The first thing to be mindful of is the impulse to immediately deploy the sum. When unexpected money arrives, there is often an impulse to direct it toward the loudest problem in your life. The problem has been waiting for resources. The resources have now arrived. The deployment seems obvious. I would gently suggest that you not act on this impulse immediately. There is value in allowing the sum to sit for a brief period while you absorb the fact of having received it. The sitting is not a delay tactic. It is part of how the new conditions become real to your nervous system. People who immediately deploy unexpected sums often find that the sums pass through their lives without leaving a trace, because the nervous system never had a chance to register that conditions had changed. A brief pause allows the registration to occur. The registration is part of what allows future sums to flow more easily. The second thing to be mindful of is the impulse to share the news with everyone in your life. When good things happen, the natural inclination is often to share. The sharing is human and understandable. But not all news of incoming money is well received by all the people in your life. Some people will receive your news with uncomplicated joy. Others may have more complicated reactions, including reactions that you would not want to manage during the early phase of integrating the sum. I would suggest sharing the news selectively. Tell the people whose reactions you can rely on to be supportive. Hold off on telling the people whose reactions might introduce complications. This is not secrecy. It is appropriate stewardship of the news. The third thing to be mindful of is the impulse to make immediate larger decisions based on the sum. The sum will create a sense, however briefly, that more is possible than was possible before. The expanded sense of possibility is real, but it should not produce hasty decisions about major life changes. Major life decisions deserve the consideration they have always deserved. The sum does not change the appropriate timeline for considering them. So if the sum makes you think about a major purchase, a major move, a major commitment, allow yourself to think about it without immediately acting. The thinking can occur in the days and weeks following the arrival. The acting can occur, if appropriate, once the thinking has produced clarity. This is Cancer Tarot, and I want to share something about how to think about the mindfulness I have just described. It is not about restricting yourself or about being afraid of the resources. It is about giving the resources the attention and consideration they deserve. People who handle money well are usually people who handle it with thoughtfulness. The thoughtfulness does not slow them down in significant ways. It only ensures that decisions are made deliberately rather than reactively. Deliberate decisions tend to produce outcomes you can stand by. Reactive decisions tend to produce outcomes that require revisiting. So the mindfulness is in service of better outcomes, not in service of restriction. I want to mention something about how the sum will interact with the larger conditions of your financial life. The sum is not isolated, it is part of a larger pattern that has been forming for some time. Other expressions of the same pattern have probably been occurring in smaller forms that you may not have always registered as significant. Small reductions in friction, small unexpected benefits, small opportunities arriving through unexpected channels. All of these have been precursors. The current arrival is a more concentrated expression of the same underlying movement. After this arrival, other expressions will continue. The pattern is not exhausted by this single event. It is being demonstrated by this single event. I want to address how to recognize the arrival when it occurs. The arrival may not announce itself with fanfare. It may arrive in a form that, on first glance, looks ordinary. You may receive a notification or a piece of communication that, on initial reading, you do not register as significant. The significance may take a moment to land. This is normal for arrivals of this kind. The under-recognition in the first moment is a feature of how the visible world delivers genuine surprises. They look like ordinary events at first. Their significance reveals itself slightly afterward. So when you receive a communication that you initially read as unremarkable, take a second moment to consider whether you have read it accurately. The second moment may produce the recognition that something significant has just occurred. I want to share something about the emotional response that may arise when the arrival lands. You may experience a particular sequence. First, surprise, the kind of surprise that produces a brief blankness as your mind catches up to what has occurred. Second, a kind of confirmation, a sense that something you had been quietly hoping for has actually happened. Third, a wave of feeling that is harder to characterize. It may include gratitude, relief, anticipation, and something that resembles awe. The sequence may take only seconds. It may unfold over a longer period. Either way, allow the sequence. Do not require yourself to feel any particular way at any particular moment. The actual feelings are what they are, and they are correct for you. I want to mention something about who may be present in your life when the arrival occurs. There may be people around you when the news arrives. There may not be. Either is fine. If there are people around you, you can choose how much of your initial response to share with them. Some people, when good news arrives, prefer to absorb it privately before discussing it with others. Others prefer to share immediately. Neither is wrong. You can do what suits your temperament. The arrival belongs to you, and your response to it is yours to handle in whatever way feels right. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that this kind of arrival is meaningful, even when the sum is modest in the larger scheme of financial transformations. The meaningfulness is not just about the resources themselves, it is about what the resources represent. The arrival represents the responsiveness of the world to who you have been being. The world has been gathering information about you for a long time. It has been registering your contributions, your integrity, your patient endurance through periods when the responsiveness was less visible. The current arrival is one form the responsiveness is taking. It is the world saying, in the only language it has for saying such things, that what you have been doing has been noticed. I want to share something about what the recognition implies for the larger arc of your life. The world's responsiveness, once it begins to express itself in this form, tends to continue. It does not produce one expression and then stop. It produces a series of expressions of varying sizes that accumulate over time into a sustained pattern. The sustained pattern is what shifts the underlying conditions of your financial life from one configuration to another. You are inside the shifting. The current arrival is one event within the shifting. More events will follow. The cumulative effect over the coming months will be a meaningful change in your overall financial situation. I want to address a possible concern. There may be a part of you that wonders whether to fully trust what I am sharing, whether the arrival will actually occur, whether the size will match what I have indicated, whether the timing will hold. I understand the wondering. Predictions of specific arrivals invite verification, and verification requires the prediction to come true in recognizable form. I want to address this directly. The arrival is real. The size will be in the range I have described, although exact amounts will of course depend on the specific channel. The timing is approximate, with the actual day likely to fall within a relatively short window. The underlying event is reliable. The specifics may vary slightly from any description I have offered, but the variation will be minor compared to the core fact of the arrival itself. This is Cancer Tarot, and I want to take a moment to address something about gratitude, because gratitude functions structurally in the kind of pattern we are discussing, and the structural function is worth understanding. Gratitude, when it is genuine, communicates to the field around you that the channel through which resources are flowing is operating successfully. The communication is not metaphorical. It is observable in how nervous systems handle receiving. People who receive with anxiety tend to close off the channel through which more could flow. People who receive with appreciation tend to keep the channel open. The keeping open is what allows future arrivals to continue moving in your direction. So the gratitude is not just a polite gesture. It is part of how the larger pattern sustains itself. I am not asking you to perform gratitude. I am asking you to allow the genuine appreciation that naturally arises when good things happen, and to let that appreciation fully express itself rather than suppressing it in favor of skepticism or worry. I want to mention something about how to handle people who may approach you after the arrival. If others become aware that you have received unexpected resources, some of them may approach you for various kinds of assistance. Some requests will be reasonable, some will not. The discernment about which is yours. I would suggest that you not feel obligated to respond to every request, and I would also suggest that you not feel obligated to refuse every request. The right response depends on the specifics. A small practice that may serve you is to take a brief pause before responding to any request, regardless of who is asking. The pause allows you to consider what you actually want to do, rather than responding from social pressure or from anxiety about being seen as ungenerous. After the pause, your response can be authentic. Authentic responses, whether they are yes or no, tend to produce better outcomes than reactive ones. I want to address something specific about a particular impulse that may arise. There may be a part of you that, having received the sum, feels an impulse to make a gesture towards someone in your life. A specific person who has been important to you, who has supported you, who has been there during difficult periods. The impulse is generous. I think you can act on it with one small refinement. Make the gesture proportional to the sum and to your other obligations. Do not deplete the sum in a single generous gesture that leaves nothing for the practical purposes the resources were also intended for. A measured gesture in proportion expresses your appreciation without compromising the other functions the resources can serve. The measured gesture will be more sustainable than an unmeasured one. I want to share something about the days and weeks after the arrival. The integration period will have its own particular texture. You will be adjusting to the new conditions, even when the conditions involve just this single sum rather than a larger transformation. The adjustment involves your nervous system updating its sense of what is currently available. You may notice small shifts in how you experience ordinary moments, a slight loosening in how you think about expenses, a slight expansion in what feels possible. These shifts are real and welcome. They are part of how the new conditions take their place in your daily life. Allow the shifts. Do not interpret them as signs that you are becoming careless. They are signs of appropriate calibration to actual conditions. I want to mention something about a particular feature of how this kind of arrival affects your relationship to time. People who have been operating under financial pressure often have a foreshortened relationship to time. Their attention is heavily concentrated on the immediate future, because the immediate future has been demanding. When unexpected resources arrive, the relationship to time can begin to extend. You may find yourself in the period after the arrival thinking about slightly longer term horizons than you have been thinking about. Plans that span months rather than days. Possibilities that involve developments rather than just responses. The extension of time horizon is one of the more valuable indirect effects of financial easing. It allows for the kind of thinking that produces better long-term outcomes. Welcome the extension when it occurs. Here on Cancer Tarot, I want to share an observation about the most reliable element of what I have been describing. The most reliable element is the underlying responsiveness of conditions to who you have been being. The specific arrival is one expression of the responsiveness. Other expressions will continue. The responsiveness itself is the foundation. You can rely on the foundation. The foundation has been built through your sustained effort over a long stretch, and it is now generating visible results. The visibility is what you are about to encounter. After this visibility, more visibility will follow, in its own time, with its own particular forms. I want to mention something about the future you that exists in the chapter, that this arrival is helping to make possible. The future you lives with more spaciousness than the current you. The future you has time, energy, and attention for things that the current conditions have not fully allowed. The future you engages with relationships, projects, and pursuits from a position of relative abundance rather than from a position of constant management. The future you is closer than you may think. The current arrival is a small step toward that future you. Other steps will follow. The cumulative effect over the coming period will be the gradual emergence of the future you as your present reality. You can welcome this emergence. You can participate in it by allowing the steps to take their place in your life as they occur. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the work you have done that has produced the conditions in which this arrival is occurring. The work has been substantial and consistent over time. You have shown up. You have made decisions, often unsupported by easy circumstances, that have demonstrated integrity. You have continued to develop yourself in ways that have not always been externally rewarded. The accumulated effect is the inner foundation that is now allowing the visible conditions to shift. The shifting is not random. It is the natural consequence of who you have been being, finally encountering the conditions that match what you have been worth all along. The matching is one of the deeper gifts. You are being met by the world in ways that better reflect who you actually are. I want to share one more thing about the mindfulness I described earlier. The mindfulness is not about being suspicious of good fortune. It is about giving good fortune the respect it deserves. Good fortune that is received with attention tends to integrate more durably than good fortune that is received with carelessness. The attention is not a burden. It is a way of fully participating in what is happening to you, rather than letting it pass through unconsciously. Full participation produces deeper benefits. The deeper benefits accumulate into a transformed sense of what your life is. You are about to receive a sum that, while not enormous in absolute terms, is meaningful in the context of your current life. The receiving will be a moment of confirmation that the larger pattern of changing conditions is real. Receive the confirmation with the attention it deserves. Allow the sum to sit briefly before deploying. Share the news selectively. Avoid major immediate decisions based on the sum alone. These small practices will help the sum integrate well, which will help the pattern continue to express itself in your favor. The sum is one expression of a larger movement. The larger movement is in your favor. The favor will continue to express itself in coming months, in forms that include but extend beyond this single arrival. You can rely on the continuation. The continuation is part of the new conditions. Welcome the conditions. Live in them. Allow them to shape your continuing life in the ways they want to shape it. The shaping is gentle. The shaping is sustainable. The shaping is good. You are loved by the conditions of your life. The conditions are responding to who you are. The response is moving in your direction. The direction is good. Walk forward with the awareness that the response is real, that the arrival is approaching, and that the larger pattern will continue beyond this single event. The awareness is enough. The receiving is enough. The integration is enough. There is no other practice required. The arrival is coming. You will recognize it when it occurs, perhaps after a small delay. Receive it with the attention it deserves. Allow it to teach you what unexpected resources can teach. The teaching includes lessons about your own capacity to hold, your own ability to respond thoughtfully, your own relationship to abundance and to scarcity. The lessons will be useful for future arrivals. Future arrivals will come. The pattern is established. The establishment is the deeper gift beyond just the single sum that is approaching. You have done the work. The work is paying. The paying continues. Trust the paying. Trust the pattern. Trust yourself to handle what is approaching with the care that you would bring to any significant moment. The care is what makes the moment fully yours. The fully yourness is the entire point. Receive what is coming. Live in it. Let it become part of the foundation of the version of your life that is now emerging into visibility. The emerging is real. The visibility is real. The arrival is real. You are ready. The receiving is the only remaining practice. Practice it. The practice is gentle. The reward is durable. Walk forward. The arrival is coming. You are ready to receive it.